Good morning, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to another episode of Value First Revenue Architecture. Excited to talk about Model 2 today, the data model with Pedro. How you doing, man?
I am good, and you?
I am great. Uh, Data modeling and the data model topic is probably my favorite thing right now because it is so critical uh, to get right in a world of trying to leverage AI and collaboration between humans. I mean, it's always been there, right? But we've been able to, some companies have been able to get away with it by, kind of mashing all these different tools together that naturally come with their own piece of the data model. And when you get lucky and get that right, things just kind of work. And you've got humans filling the gaps contextually everywhere, creating notes and little tidbits everywhere throughout the system to help them navigate the day. But we know that's getting harder and harder, especially as you try to put AI in that situation. I think people understand it's not working in a lot of cases. And it gets pretty magical, like when you can take a step back and look at these models that we're talking about in this series, especially this one. At the very least, it can help you get real clear, real quick uh, on where the gaps are in the situation and how easy it can be, like to fill them. Once you get to a point where it's like, oh, I can just use a different object to handle this data, and now my team can own it and there's not so much conflict and alignment. That's why I get so passionate about this topic because it is foundational to most of what we're talking about in this series, and I'm excited to talk about it with you today, man.
Yes, I'm excited as well, especially because then like we start to see the relationship between the models. You will understand that to have a really good data model in place, you need to understand the revenue model, what we discussed in previous live. So if you are, if you are watching this live and you don't have an idea what is like a revenue model, please check the previous episode because there like we discuss a little bit about ownership, subscription, consumption type of revenue model, and how they have this super clear in your mind will help you. Yeah, will help you to understand what is the next steps and how you should measure them because they are different than they are different between them. They have difference in terms of velocity, in terms of conversion, in terms of strategy. And today we are going to talk about the data model itself. So probably you already know the data model is kind of the V2 of the traditional marketing funnel. Oh, sorry, my camera. So as you can see on the left sidebar, on the left side, it's um, the traditional marketing funnel, awareness, education, selection, and then the multi-model comes because it's it's not sustainable to rely on new revenue anytime, all time. I would say all time. So as you grow as a company, you need to at some point understand how we can keep our clients and how we can make their experience better in a point there they are willing to renew the contract or upsell their current contract. So that's why we have the right side of this multi-model. That's why it's so important because in a couple years ago, I believe a little bit kind of in pandemic period, a lot of companies they were like invest on the acquisition part only, and they didn't paying attention about like retention expansion. I can tell based on my experience in the pandemic period. I was like a account executive, and I sold a lot of contracts. Honestly, I made a lot of money, and I remember my company received a lot of investment. And guess what? Nothing happened. Like they need to pivot the business because as we close new contracts, they needed to like increase the customer success team, and it was
Mhm.
not sustainable.
Yep.
So and then like now we have AI, we have a lot of things, but the thing that is now it's a lot of companies they are trying to start their go to marketing strategy, taking consideration a sustainable uh, revenue growth. Um, and that's why we have the right side of the bow-tie model here.
Yeah. And meanwhile, like, I don't know that it's ever been uh, not true that most people understand the easiest revenue to generate from a business for a business is from the current customers, right? And meanwhile, we've had systems and frameworks that end at closed one, right?
Yeah.
And and you think about, HubSpot. It hasn't been except for the last few years, right? Help desk and customer success, like, it has not been a focus. And when you think about the life cycle stages that you usually see, right? And the importance of breaking them out like this model does, um, onboarding, adoption, usage. Traditionally, we've had customer and champion or evangelist or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, how do we get from customer to evangelist? Like, how do it clearly, we just bucket everybody as customer and then hope we do a good job. Usually we're incentivizing them in some way. And all right, this person will talk about us out loud and we can mark them as a champion. And it just doesn't align with what everybody knows and feels. Meanwhile, in a B2B business, the non-revenue focused teams are the ones that are supposed to be leading the way after closed one, right? So initially, as people start to realize that retention and expansion are should be prioritized, you start to put these new revenue goals on these other teams that have never worked with a model like this. They're used to just like, black and white, zeros and ones, input equals output. And that's not how expansion and retention work. It's all about experience. And if you don't understand these two sides of the model, it's very hard to understand the experience that needs to be provided throughout the journey.
Yeah. I think it's the reason why I laugh is because you are right. I remember a couple of onboardings where we have like the traditional life cycle stage inside of HubSpot. Then we have, I believe it's like subscriber, lead, and then like we have customer, and then we have evangelist, and like nobody knows what to do with evangelist. And then like I, I mean like uh yeah, like we don't know what to do, like because I know we need to respect the I'm super fan of respecting the company moment and understand that okay, sometimes we don't have the structure needs required to implement like um, a really good like retention expansion process, but there is no way to move someone from customer to evangelist based on an NPS only or something like this. Yeah, so you need to take in consideration a couple of things.
Yeah. And it wasn't even until, I don't know, 18 months ago where we could even change those stages inside the system, right? So naturally people create other properties, other drop downs, It doesn't work well with the rest of the system, and it just creates this loop the wrong way, like this friction loop of like that's why we haven't ever addressed this properly. Um,
Mhm.
but it's
Mhm.
exciting to see. That's why I was excited once we could start, customizing life cycle stages. But this is exactly why you should be able to you should want to do that. Just know you have to start here to go customize and make stages that make sense, like for your business too.
Yes. Let me share my screen. I have so this is what I'm going to show here is the mapping I am using every day. This is a Lucid template. So if you have Lucid, you can go to templates and search by Winnie by Design, and you should be able to see everything I'm going to present here. The only difference is because we change a couple of things, like the colors. We kind of simplify a little bit because the original template, there's a lot of information which sometimes may cause confusion. So this is like the template we use to um, help companies understand what is the best data model for them. So, and this is interesting because as you can see, we have four different tabs here, and all of them is like a multi model. What is the difference? The difference is this: the touch, the motion, the motion. So if you have like a high touch, it's one thing. If you have mid touch, it's one thing. If you have like low touch, then it's other thing. And then if you have, let's say, a no recurrent motion, for example, law firms, they don't have they don't have subscription or this kind of stuff. No recurrent motion, then a little bit different. So here we can understand, like here we can now understand how one model is like tied to each other, because
Yeah,
if ownership, probably ownership is high touch, probably. If you have like a subscription motion, like a go as a go to marketing strategy, you have like a mid touch, probably. So you need to take this in consideration before go and start talking about like the multi model.
yeah.
Um,
And this is what, like, so you mentioned the different types of revenue that are explained in the revenue model, right? So without that, it's very easy to apply this in a like one kind of one way, uh, depending on which way you see it, right? Which because lots of people talk about the bow tie model, but if it's specific to any kind of revenue type, it can be very easy to try and take that and apply it to your business. Might be a different revenue type and have it not work, right?
yeah,
So this part is super important.
it is, and honestly, that's this is like it's one of the reasons why companies usually they don't. I see a couple of people saying like, "Hey, multi-model is not." Um, I don't know. It's not efficient. I already see this on LinkedIn, and I agree at some point in terms of like it's a model. You can't like rely on a model and I don't know. Maybe I will be success because I implement this. No, it's a model, and if you set up these in the wrong way, like it will not give you insights. Or if you implement these and you don't use these like to analyze your data moving forward, yeah, it's kind of useful. So one of the things I see companies doing is like having different types of motion. And because like the mid touchy, like MQL, SQL, SAL is most popular type of life cycle stages or buyer journey nomenclature, they try to apply the same thing into their industry, which doesn't almost doesn't make sense at all. Like if, for example, you Chris, you have a experience with manufacturing. In manufacturing, honestly, they don't know what it means like MQL, probably. You
Yeah.
know, it's not like it's not their language, it's not their like their reality. So probably I see manufacturing most of the time they are more familiar with this, like targets is the one type of language that it's makes more sense, you know.
Yep.
Probably they don't know like what is like marketing qualified account, but you can educate them. Opportunity is clear, you know. So I think again we talk about it like last time, and again I think this is the opportunity to talk with your team and understand if everybody's on the same page regarding the stages itself and their definitions, because probably they are not.
Yeah. Nah, when you mentioned that, my mind went to leads and key accounts. Are usually the two big things, and then one of those turns into opportunities. Um, and usually they're trying to, like, all the extra stuff that gets added to the primary thing that you're trying to sell. Let's say a piece of capital equipment. The capital equipment itself is a very high touch motion. Like sometimes sales processes that last years, right? Because that's the budget cycle, or you got to wait for the piece of equipment that's supposed to last 20 or 30 years. Um, you know, if it breaks, okay, you got to be right there when it's ready. Um, but alongside that, you have service contracts and consumables and parts and service visits. And from the buyer perspective, that those are like I need it right now moments. We don't even need to talk about it. You know me. You know who I am. You should know what products I have. You should know my entire history, like that I've had with your business. Why are we having to go through this high touch motion process? And they're not going to hear it. Like, well, that's our process. That's how we do quotes. That's how I got to qualify the hell out of you first, even though I should know everything about you already. Uh, and it's you can see how uncomfortable the humans on each side get. Like it's crazy when you watch this. This is why value first exists, folks. You can see both humans know that this conversation should not be happening. Yet they know if they don't complete the conversation, they will not be able to get to the next step of value for either side. So they go through the motions. And that's when you're lucky, if like from a business perspective. But in a lot of these spaces, customers, they don't have any other choices. And there's so much settling that happens. So it's been this weird cycle, like a reverse flywheel of just, okay, I guess this is how it goes. And then the salesperson's like, yep, I got to do this. You know the deal. Like, we're just going to ask these questions, confirms your whole life story so that I can make sure you got the right account, the right piece of equipment. Meanwhile, Amazon like never has any human touch and knows everything about you. And uh, this is the kind of stuff behind the scenes at Amazon and other great customer experiences where they have defined the revenue model and what it takes to create that revenue, how many touches, who's touching, when do they need to be touched, and when do they don't need to be touched, right? Because this high touch, as soon as you win and it becomes an account that's managed, that's when the other two revenue models come into play, and that's where retention and expansion live, right? They don't want a bunch of high touches. What happens? We create the deal for like 12 months out. We don't talk to them like for 11 months, and then we get the notifications like, oh, renewal on the radar. Let's start the motion again because it's a deal that I gotta close. And I mean, how often do we hear like, oh, I haven't heard from you for 11 months, and now the first time I hear from you, it's about renewal? Surprise, they don't like that, right?
Yeah.
So when
Uh,
when when people say it's not efficient, um, is that what is usually happening, let's say, inside of the CRM that makes them feel like it's not efficient?
First of all, like in HubSpot, sometimes they set up their HubSpot wrong at the first time. They have a lot of data, historical data, and now they need to change the life cycle. They need to rethink everything, and it's tough. And the reason why it's tough because um, the life cycle properties, like the default ones inside of a HubSpot, you can't override them. By the way, I don't know why, but if a HubSpot can help us with this, like the enter date, exit date, and the cumulative time, these three properties they are not you can override them via import, integrations, or manually,
Yeah. So we
which
got to
makes
make historical versions of them as we bring data in.
yeah yes yes. And then what is the other challenge? You need to do the historical versions of them. Then like you need to recreate these fields for the new properties, the new life cycle stage, because otherwise you will not be able to display the historical data into the like the funnel reporting. um, so this is painful, and then like companies may think, hey, makes sense. My recommendation would be, if you have a lot of data inside of your CRM, maybe probably it's better to export this data in a spreadsheet. Don't lose any type of uh, you know metric and analysis, but use then like this new model moving forward, because honestly it's super painful. And the problem is like you need to maintain these automations. You need to make sure like the data, the fields, they are being populated by workflows, and you need to rebuild all of your reports based on these custom properties. So I don't probably, of course, HubSpot, they have a reason why it is as it is, but would be helpful, super helpful, great if you can edit these like default fields manually via import or via integration. So or the other, but like okay, this is like more technical and like a real life type of issue. But most of the main reason why they feel it's not useful is because they are trying to match a mid touch type of stages here to I don't know, a high touch motion. Or this is the problem. We will see on the growth model. When by design they have a growth model where they recommend you to keep one GTM motion until like achieve a certain revenue. But there's a lot of companies trying to run high touch, mid touch, and low touch. They don't even have like, I don't know, $100,000 in revenue, in ARR, which makes everything super hard to understand how we should handle or modify these three different. Yeah, this one,
Yeah.
this one, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is that resonates a lot, right? I mean, and it makes sense as to why it happens, because as soon as you understand there's opportunity in a certain direction, right? You try to go that direction. It just takes a few customers to say, "Oh yeah, I buy that," right? And then they buy it because they trust you and they're loyal, right? And it just seems so easy. Okay, let's add it in, like, to the whole strategy, right? And this is why, that doesn't work, right? Um, grown up over here is why the Amazons of the world and the other big companies can do that stuff, Like, they have a huge audience. They know what that audience, like, everything about them, and when they add new products, it's much easier with the resources they have and the reach they already have to get immediate feedback and make it work and deliver products. But even in those cases, those companies, you know, have failures of new products. But this whole infrastructure that they built up allows them to take, chances like that. Whereas if you're in startup mode, you don't have a lot of resources or time, or the risk is high if you make changes like that, while you're still trying to teach the market, what your value is. Um, so I'm glad you brought that up. I do want to get to so when I think data modeling and data models, I'm thinking like object object structure in HubSpot and how we make things work together. Um, how do you see these things? Is that in your other? Do you have that in the other diagram?
Yes. Let me show here.
All right.
I remember. Probably we will remove this from here. But if you go to Lucid Charge, and you have like a template Win by Design add here on below the object itself, contact, opportunity, like like which object will trigger the actual stage. Sorry, we don't have here, but in
That's okay.
terms of object, um,
I'll pull it up on my side and you can keep
go
going.
ahead. Yeah. So in terms of object, I would say normally in high touch, mid touch. I mean, first of all, we centralize everything inside of the contact. We keep in contact. One of the things I like to do is like remove the life cycle stage from the object layout because it avoid any type of manual update. So lifecycle, all of them should be automatically update. You never should take touch on this manually to avoid any type of issues. So normally, let's say in mid touch, if someone came from a website and they are on awareness stage, probably they will be inside of contact. Um, Now we are in the education phase. We are taking, as you can see here, lead to opportunity. But in this case, what we are using a lot, because honestly, I love how HubSpot implement this, is the lead object. So normally, like between between MQL to SQL, we can use the lead object. And once they move the lead to qualify, then it triggers the automation to SQL. I'm saying I'm like talking about like a super straightforward and super common generic use case. Once they became an opportunity, it's interesting. I would recommend some kind of double check. So normally, like the BDR team, SDR team, they book a discovery meeting, and then the account executive team they need to actually uh, um, they need to double check the data moved from the BDR team uh, that came from the BDR team, and then understand if it is actually an opportunity or not, and then move to SAL or in some cases opportunity. Because then like we can kind of take these deals or take this case in consideration for forecasting and everything. Then we have win. Win is like normally once it's a close one, and commit. It's when you finish the onboarding. Here, I would say it's a ticket object will trigger this. So yeah, actually we have contacts, we have leads, we have deals, and we have tickets. All of them working together as a trigger to you know to update the buyer journey.
Yeah. And it's I think this is the challenge is trying to match internal process like at this complex level. Which I'd say this is, part of what this diagram is focused on is like how are we managing this internally, right? To get people to match this journey that we need people to go on, um, to create the revenue, like to get to the revenue model success that we've outlined. Um, I generally, because I already showed, this thing, right?
Yeah.
Super complex if we just look at it from the top. And we're gonna come back to it. Uh, but the way that I think about it, and try to help others think about it, and I think it relates to all the layers on this diagram here, uh, right? And I'll need your help. Like when we get back to the other diagram, I've got some questions. But here's an example of just like here's the journey that people have at the top, and then as they move, data gets created, right? And that needs objects like contact, lead, deal, right? Quote, invoice, orders, right? Exactly what Pedro mentioned. And the the challenge that we have on our hands now, and I always like to use AI as a representative of how bad our knowledge set currently is. Because if you mention HubSpot and ask it like about objects in HubSpot, it will default to contacts, companies, and deals every time, right? Meanwhile, even when you ask it about native objects, meanwhile, there's 20 plus native objects at this point, right? So helping people understand these are
Yeah.
all like data containers and like to catch all of this data, right? In a meaningful way. And what came to mind as I started looking at this this morning is, and actually Claude called some stuff out when I was asking him to help create a description for this episode. The problem is that most executives we have very focused on the top two layers, right?
Yeah.
And then they cherry pick uh,
Mhm.
from layer one, right? And what do they cherry pick? They cherry pick volume metrics, like number of leads, number of whatever, and conversion metrics, right? So lead management. That's what people buy HubSpot for most of the time, right? I need more leads. I need better lead management. I need better conversion rates. Current conversion rate optimization, like is a well-known acronym, right? Meanwhile, people cost, campaign cost, time metrics. We're getting there, but we didn't build the data model underneath, like to support that. And before I hand it back to you, like these like time metrics and understanding how all these things work together through a time-based journey is where this whole other layer of um, pipelines comes into play, right? And
Yes.
that's where the revenue model and the operational models and these models start to work together. Because even if we just look at deals and you talk about like low touch here, medium touch, high touch, different stages. And what happens when we think we're supposed to stick to one deal or we try to apply one deal pipeline to everything we do, we skip stages. Salespeople like they know like this stage doesn't make sense, so I guess I'm just going to this stage, or I'll turn it in when it's closed one because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with all these stages, and there's probably like required fields to move stages, and those required fields don't make sense in this case. So I'm just handing it in. I need to close business. So I'll do what I need to do outside of the CRM and then hand it, and then I'll create it either at the quote time or at closed one, right? And we lose all of this visibility.
Yes. Yes. Chris, I love how you use examples because it is like, yeah, it's a super common example. You know what is a the other thing is like a lot of companies they want to see the layer 4 and 3, but they don't have like the data model really well set up. They don't have any type of model. I don't know where we should like take this type of information unless you, I don't know, try to export this data from your CRM and make some magic,
That's exactly
and
what I was going to say. Like,
you know
if you've
so
seen CFO spreadsheets, that's exactly what they're doing in there. It's magic. Like, they love it because they know what they need to do to make the data tell them
what they want. Yeah.
sometimes what they want. I'd say CFOs of any other part of the business are usually pretty objective, but since they've got to do it and you've got to report as an organization, guess what they do? They give out 20 different versions of that spreadsheet for people to update their metrics, right? And that's where data literacy and like you can make data say just about anything you want to say when you put it in a spreadsheet, right? And you're forced to do that. And this is I've tried to develop this skill of using examples because the timing of the examples I think is everything. Because guess what? This diagram that we're looking at is not simple. It's complex. And there's no way to make it simple. So this idea of keep it simple has done leaders a disservice.
Hmm.
Smart leaders can understand this if you take a moment, and that's all it is. It can be 5 to 10 minutes to take an executive through a diagram like this, and immediately they start to understand, like, this is why stuff is not working. You can easily point to things like, see how this connects to this? Oh, yeah. Well, you're not doing this part. Okay, I guess we should start doing it, right? Well, it's going to cost money. Oh, okay, let's think about it. Well, do you want to do it right or not? Right. And that's where it is a decision between the way they've always done things and who's enabling and who's executing the process, because you have very good salespeople that have been able to manage without, they can keep it simple when it's just conversations with customers, right? The moment it gets to complexity, like it's a challenge for organizations, right?
Yeah.
So can you think of times where you've talked this through with somebody and like what either the hardest thing to explain or things that are have surprised you is how quickly people understand it?
I mean, I think in terms of this slide, it's like self-explanatory. It is like one of the reasons why we use the boot-time model, because then like they understand, because like, a lot of, honestly, at the end of the day, everybody needs to report some kind of data. Like the sales rep needs to report the, I don't know, activity or their like deals, like his status. The manager needs to report the sometimes the more tactical type of metrics like time, conversions, and everything. And the leadership needs to report the strategic type of dashboard. And then honestly, it's easy to convince them of like the importance of using multi model or some kind of model, or at least talk about it, because otherwise it's I don't know how you would like be able to report this type of stuff. I'm not sure how, unless you have, I don't know, sometimes big companies they have a different source of data out of their CRM, and unless we make this process of pull up simple metrics, tactical and strategic metrics, super painful. If we are willing to do this, okay, great, it's not a problem at all. But this should be easy. I mean, not easy, but the foundation. If we don't talk about foundation first, uh, I don't know how we need to
Yeah.
figure out a different way to pull up this thing. So
Right.
honestly, this is easy to sell. Kind of the importance of talking about the multi-model or how we manage the overall CRM structure and objects and fields and everything, because then like we can tie these more real life requirements or ideas and things to the big picture and say, hey, do you understand how these things impact the everything, or like adding like additional, I don't know, follow up deal stage, hey, it will impact the probably the time metrics, you know so this type of stuff. And I think we are more than happy to help, maybe in the next episode, show a little bit inside of HubSpot how we can bring this type of metrics and how we can set up a couple of things there. Maybe
Yeah.
it may be helpful, but yeah.
I think that would be a good next step. Because like this whole what you mentioned about the spreadsheets, like that happens because we need to communicate the data at some point. You need to communicate insights from the data. And when you can't build your dashboards and reports in whatever system, and I've seen this in every system, like doesn't matter if it's the most complex ERP, like almost it's hard to convince people sometimes that they can rely just on dashboards, right? They'll always want to double check, but then they have to put it in their own business context too. So that's another reason they pull it out. And as we go into that, it's if you can think about it, we've got to create data, right? We've got to manage data, and we've got to communicate data, right? HubSpot is by far the easiest system, at least with customer data, to communicate data. The more that we can get the other two things in there, creation and management, it gets a lot easier. And then we talk about operations hub and things like that. But creation can happen anywhere as long as it ends up in a place that it's easy to communicate. And that includes understanding the data, right? So this data model on the bottom, that data is getting created, whether you've decided what your data model is or not. It's either in the heads of your team, or it's on a spreadsheet, or it's on a pad of paper. The data is always getting created by behavior and interaction. The key is, how do we systematize it so now it's manageable and maintainable, right? People bring it into spreadsheets so they can manage and maintain it and transform it and then communicate it with their slides or share the spreadsheet with others because they were able to make the chart right there, right? So I look forward to jumping into HubSpot with you next week and kind of showing some of this stuff in action.
For sure, I'm excited.
I am as well. And that's where we'll wrap for today, though. Exciting look at model number 2, the data model, and hang out with us next week so that we can jump in and show you some stuff in HubSpot. Until then, everybody have a great weekend. Thanks so much, Pedro.
Thanks so much, Chris. Great. Thanks so much. And thank you again for the opportunity and talk about this complex idea. And let's try help the community translate this complexity into the CRM.
Indeed. Thanks so much, everybody.